All right, let's do this.
Let's chat.
Okay, so one of the biggest questions that I get asked, and I'm sure you get asked all the time about the Unity IEMs, is how many drivers are in them? And I mean, the answer is 4, but I often want to draw that answer out a little bit because, in my opinion, the driver count game is a better marketing tool than it is an actual way to make in-ear monitors sound better. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. When I started out with Plunge Audio, before you joined, that was the whole game, was how many drivers you could get into a pair of custom monitors. And everybody was doing it, and I thought that's what you had to do to get the sound quality. I started out with dual and triple drivers and from Knowles, and they were like pre-built, and I just attached a positive and negative lead and went, oh, this is what they sound like. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to make them sound like me rather than, sort of a predetermined product. And so I used to take, the Knowles had this triple driver thing, which sounded great. There was nothing wrong with it. But I pulled cut the tweeter off because it was glued to the sub, and then I'd pull all the leads off the tweeter and go, well, there's 2 drivers here. Could I use 2 tweeters and make them sound different? Use a dual tweeter. And then I had a great conversation with a guy at Sony, and I was new. I didn't really even know how to create a crossover. If I'm honest, I didn't really know. I was like, how do you do it? And I developed a relationship with him, and he gave me some pointers. And then at one point, he said to me on the phone, because I was looking for a tweeter, and he said, I have this tweeter, and nobody wants it. It sounds like a Dr. Seuss thing. Nobody wants this tweeter. He's like, it's the best sounding tweeter that we have. I love it. The tonality and the quality of it is great. And he's like, but nobody wants it because it's a single tweeter. And that was like an eye-opening moment for me of like, why doesn't anybody want it? If it sounds great, why don't people want it? He's like, because people all the companies had to have at least dual or quad drivers.
Yeah.
It's like, so nobody buys this driver because it's a single. It's our best sounding driver. So it was at that moment, within about 3 years of starting Plunge Audio, that I decided I wanted the best sounding driver. I'm like, that's the one I want. If that's a single and it's the best sounding, that's the one I want. And he's like, great, let's do it. And that single tweeter became my staple tweeter for easily 10 years. All the producer model, just about every model had that tweeter in it. And it was from that little conversation with my friend at Sony, and that I had decided that I wanted the best sounding drivers, not the number of drivers, the best sounding. Now, that being said, building customs for 14 or 15 years, I did get into other drivers and going, well, what does this do and what does that do? And I built lots of 9 drivers per side sort of thing. It was a demand in the thing. But I found over the course of this whole thing, and as you will attest to, that the more I started eliminating things, the better it started to sound. And it got me really curious about, what is that driver really doing? What is the purpose of that driver? So in the design of the Unity, this all led to the Unity of like, how can I make this the simplest possible scenario that sounds as good or better than customs?
Right.
And the fewer drivers gave me more room to work with within the shell, gave me way more options. It enabled us to eliminate tubes and eliminate dampers because we had more physical space. It enabled us to continue with what I had called the octave tech, the open canal tuned acoustic volume thing that I've been doing on customs for years. Enabled us to do that. So the driver count scenario ended for me a long time ago.
Yeah.
And, it serves its purpose in some scenarios to, give you more headroom if your drivers are quiet. But what I found with getting rid of tubes and dampers, that the acoustic impedance was so low, was essentially zero. There was no acoustic impedance anymore, that they were so loud, I didn't need the headroom.
Right.
I didn't need to double up drivers to create headroom. They were too loud. In fact, we had to we had to dial them back because they were
down. Yep.
And really, we say quad driver, but it's two drivers. They're both dual drivers. If they were both single drivers, I would have used them.
Yep.
That they don't even have them in a single version.
Oh, part of me wishes we could have achieved the sound of the Unity IEM with one driver just to make a point.
Yeah.
That driver count does not matter.
Yeah.
And now I'm curious. So when you were talking to your friend at Sony and he told you that this tweeter is the best sounding tweeter, what does that mean? What did that mean to him, and what does that mean to you? The best sounding tweeter.
The best sounding tweeter has a sonic character to it, and I've used Knowles a lot in the past, and we're probably going to use Knowles again. They're great drivers. Knowles has a very different character, to the TWFK and the SWFK. They have a real character. And those drivers I used a lot, and they're fantastic. But for me, I found them sonically a little bit bright, a little bit too sort of poignant, a little too
right.
And still good. They're great drivers, but it was just what I was envisioning, and this driver that I started to use from Sony it had this warmth and this smoothness, and it was really, you could kind of use it in all these scenarios. You could use it really up close to the canal. You could kind of pull it back. It had what I used to do in the producer, because it had three, it had the negative, and then you could go half. You could go to the center pin and get half the gain. So we're not doing that anymore. I can give away that secret. I use both.
Right.
I don't know why. It was intuitive, but when I heard it, and any engineer go, why would you do? That's not how the driver. But to me, it sounded even better.